blurry and weird. Test. Alright. Gonna go. You ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1, we're live. Hello everybody. William Watt here again, once more to ruin your day with another live reading. Hello, how are you all doing? This is day 4 of my 5-day in a row live streaming challenge, which has been super fun. And there's been like a nice little crowd that's come and joined me for the last 3 days. I'm hoping that I'm going to have some... I've already got comments. Hi guys, chatting away. Hello. Oh, gosh, old friends, back again once more. So today I'm going to be bringing you the first of 2 books that I'm going to be reading by R.L.King, who's a wonderful author who I've been working with for about a year and a half now. And the books that I'm going to be reading for, the first one today is going to be The Forgotten, which is book number 2 in the Alastair Stone Chronicles. And then I'm going to be reading the entirety of Stone for the Holidays, which is the Alastair Stone holiday bonus story, which is only available to subscribers usually of the R.L.King newsletter. So it's going to be very exciting. I hope you enjoy it. The crazy thing is I'm going to be doing an American accent for the book, because this is a book that I narrate in an American accent. So gone is my normal British brogue. And I'm going to be giving away a free copy of the book as well. So if you would like a free copy of The Forgotten by R.L.King, you've got to follow the same rules as before. It looks like from the comments it's the same likely suspects that have been here day in, day out. So you know the drill by now. But just in case there's anyone new here, if you would like to win a free copy of The Forgotten, all you need to do is check out the video description below, which has got a link to a Facebook page, another Facebook page, and a YouTube page. You need to go and like and subscribe and get yourself involved on all of that social media goodness. Then go to my Facebook page and leave me a comment saying that you've done it, and I'll put you into a draw to win a free copy of the book, which I will decide as soon as this live stream has ended in, I don't know, approx an hour's time. So oh hi Pam Fleming, how you doing? Nice to see you here. Hi Sin. No tech issues yet today. So far. You know, the night is young. My iPad battery's on 28%, so maybe that'll be the first thing to go. Who knows? Cool. So without further ado, here. Excuse me. I need to refresh myself some more clearly. Here is Chapter 1 of The Forgotten by R.L.King. I get stage fright at the beginning here. I'm like, ooh, am I sat properly? Ooh. Chapter 1. Alastair Stone felt the doctor's gaze on him the moment he entered the office. Its intensity was almost a physical thing. He couldn't blame the man, not really. It was hardly an orthodox course of treatment, calling in an occult expert to examine an 8-year-old girl. Next to him, looking hunched and stressed and somehow diminished, was the girl's aunt. Nancy McLean was 40-ish and comfortably chubby, with bad skin and an expensive skirt suit that somehow didn't quite fit her properly. She kept glancing at Stone as if she wanted nothing more than to take his hand and squeeze it. To Stone's relief, she had so far refrained from doing so. The doctor didn't rise from behind his desk. He, too, was in his 40s, shrewd-eyed and harried-looking. He probably had too many cases to handle, any of them with more than the minimal amount of attention, but gave the impression that he had at least tried. I read that completely wrong. You know, so this is one of the behind-the-scenes wonderful things about audiobooks, is sometimes you're reading an audiobook, and then a little thing goes off in your brain that's like, hold on a second, what the shit did you just read? What was that? Did you read that wrong? Yes, very. Try again. And ordinarily, I don't have the embarrassment of having to, stare down a camera and be like, oh shit, I fucked up. But today, unfortunately, I do. So, oh shit, I fucked up. Let me go back. He, too, was in his 40s, shrewd-looking and harried-looking. Shrewd-eyed and harried-looking. I'm not getting any better, am I? He probably had too many cases to handle any of them with more than the minimal amount of attention, but gave the impression that he at least tried. He looked Stone up and down, then glanced at Nancy. "Miss McLean, how are you?" "Holding up," she said, voice quavering a bit, hands clutching on the strap of her leather bag. She had heavy dark circles under her eyes. She indicated Stone. "This is Dr. Alastair Stone. He's the expert I wanted to bring in to talk to Madison. Dr. Stone, this is Dr. Eric Barnett. He's looking after her." Stone nodded and offered his hand. "Doctor?" He kept his voice even. This was no place for his usual sardonic charm. He'd even worn a suit as opposed to his more typical black t-shirt, jeans, and ubiquitous black overcoat. He didn't think he would be in any help. What is going on with me today? Yesterday I was so good. I remember halfway through the stream thinking to myself with smugness, I don't think I've messed up at all. And now I'm still on the first page, look, and I can't help but mess up at every opportunity. Gosh. This was no place for his usual sardonic charm. He'd even worn a suit as opposed to his more typical black t-shirt, jeans, and ubiquitous black overcoat. He didn't think he would be any help in this situation, but at least he could give these people the courtesy of appearing to take his involvement seriously. To be fair, there weren't too many situations where an 8-year-old girl murdering her mother by stabbing a pencil so far into the woman's eye that it pierced her brain didn't require a certain degree of seriousness. The doctor hesitated a moment, then rose and shook Stone's hand, eyes narrowed. "Dr. Stone, I hope you'll forgive me for saying so, but I want to be upfront with you. I was against this course of action." "Of course you were," Stone said, nodding. "I understand." In truth, he felt the same way. It was a horrific situation, but horrific situations were happening all over the world every day. It didn't mean that the occult was involved. He was convinced that the girl had simply snapped her tether. That happened too. It was particularly unfortunate when it occurred with someone so young and innocent, but in his experience, the universe rarely held much sympathy for either youth or innocence. "I want him to talk to her," Nancy McLean insisted. The murdered woman had been her sister, a single mother raising Madison with no help from the girl's absent father. "I know it might not do any good, but I'm willing to try anything at this point." She looked as if she might begin to cry and rummaged in her handbag for a tissue. Tea break, very important. Dr. Barnett managed not to look either uncomfortable or skeptical. To give Nancy a moment of privacy to get herself back together, he turned his attention back to Stone. "I must admit you're not what I expected." Stone smiled a little. "You were expecting someone a bit more unusual." "That's one way to put it," he said. "You do come highly recommended, though. I checked your credentials before allowing this. I had no idea they even had an occult department at Stanford." "We are rather small," Stone admitted. He'd been surprised a few days ago when Nancy McLean had shown up in his office on campus and made her entreaty. Apparently one of the administrative assistants was a friend of hers and had pointed her at Stone when, after a few drinks, the topic had turned to things like demonic possession. It had taken some convincing on her part, but finally Stone had agreed to talk to the girl if Nancy could get permission from the appropriate people. He figured there was no way any self-respecting physician or psychiatrist would allow someone like him anywhere near a fragile young patient. Apparently, though, either Nancy's skill at persuasion exceeded Stone's estimation, or else the doctors on the case were more desperate than they were willing to admit. Either way, he'd gotten the call early this week, and a packet of papers had arrived by overnight mail a day later. "You're familiar with the case, I take it," Barnett said, glancing down at a thick folder on his desk. Several similar folders were stacked off to the side. Stone thought he might be correct about Barnett's caseload. He nodded. "I read through the information you sent me. The details had made for an uncomfortable read. The little girl had apparently gone into her sleeping mother's room and, with no hesitation, taken a sharpened pencil and jammed it into the woman's eyes so hard that it had pierced not only the eye, but the brain, almost to the back of the skull. They hadn't found her until the next day, when the mother hadn't shown up for work, nor the girl for school. When Nancy McLean had gone in to check on them, she'd found Madison seated on the floor next to the bed, nearly catatonic. When asked what had happened, she'd said, "I hurt Mommy," and then broken into sobs. No sign of any prior indication that something like this might occur, yes? "Not that we're aware of," Barnett said, opening his folder. "According to her teachers, friends, and Ms. McLean, she seemed to be a normal, healthy, happy little girl up until 2 weeks ago." Nancy swallowed and dabbed at her eyes, nodding. "She was. I tried to visit when I could, since Amy worked so hard just to make ends meet. She and Madison got along great. Amy was always bringing home little things for her, doing her best to give her a happy childhood. She even got her into a ballet class recently, which Madison had been wanting for a long time. I can't see how." She dissolved into sniffles again. "I'm sorry." "It's all right, Mrs. McLean," Barnett said gently. He looked at Stone again, his expression stern. Words, guys, words. "I want you to understand before we go in, Dr. Stone, that I can't allow you to do anything to upset Madison. No talk of demons or ghosts or whatever it is you people talk about. If I think she's getting too agitated or uncomfortable, I'll end the interview immediately. Understood?" "Of course," Stone said. "All right then. Please come with me." He rose and started toward the office door. Nancy rose as well, but Barnett came around the desk and put a hand on her arm. "Miss McLean, I think it might be best if Dr. Stone and I talk to Madison alone." The door opened and a nurse entered. "If you'll go with Nurse Edmonds, she'll take you to a place where you can observe, all right?" Nancy nodded, still looking miserable, and allowed herself to be led off. She paused in the doorway, turning back toward Stone. "Please, Dr. Stone, if you find anything, I'll let you know, of course," he assured her. "I know..." Where am I? I've lost my place. What is wrong with me? I'm jinxed. There I am. "I'll let you know, of course," he assured her. She nodded again, and she and the nurse exited. When she was gone, Barnett paused. "Dr. Stone, I know. You think I'm a fraud and that this is pointless. Frankly, I do too. It's much rarer than the general public believes to have the occult involved in situations like this." Barnett looked like he was about to say something, then visibly switched gears. Yes, but I agreed to humor Ms. McLean as a favor to a friend, and unless you see any harm in my chatting with the girl for a few minutes, it might be best just to do it and get it over with so you can move on with your treatment." "All right, then." Barnett seemed relieved at Stone's pragmatism. "Let's go." So that is the first half of chapter 1. I'm going to pause there for a moment, because these chapters are long. R.L.King, she's not messing around. Let's have a look in the chat. Hi, Shauna. How are you doing? Thanks for joining us. Not British today. No, not British today. I'm doing my American accent. The voice is making me tingly. Oh, gosh. Well then. R.L.King is one of your favorite authors. I'm so glad. She's one of my favorite authors too, and she's just a cool person. You should definitely give these a try. Hot291CA. I've totally forgotten who you are. I remember that you won the book on the first day, but I can't remember who you are. But yeah, you should. They're great. There's like a whole 15 books. They've got a backlog that you can go through. And if you are watching and would like to give these books a listen and be in with a chance of winning a copy of one of these books, this is The Forgotten by R.L.King, which is an urban fantasy. Then have a little look in the video description. I'm going to need you to like R.L.King's Alastair Stone Chronicles Facebook page. You're going to need to like my Facebook page. You're going to need to subscribe to Sound Booth Theatre, who are an awesome audiobook production company who make a lot of full cast audio dramas, which are available on Audible. And then once you've done all of those things, go back to my Facebook, leave me a little comment saying that you've done them, and I'll put you in a prize draw to win a free copy of this book, The Forgotten by R.L.King. And if you liked it enough tonight, and you would like to hear more R.L.King, I'm going to be reading her again tomorrow, and I'm going to be reading an entire novella, which is going to be an undertaking because it's going to work out being about an hour and a half long, and I think I've generally been reading about 45 minutes worth of copy thus far this week, so it's going to be a bit of an extension, but it's the trials and tribulations I like to put myself through in order to, you have to suffer for your art, right? And I joke, it's not suffering at all. It'll be a treat because I haven't read it yet, so I'll be reading it for the first time with you. But good, now that I'm suitably refreshed. So when or if ever you happen to converse with our narrators, you'll need to speak American and they'll need to speak British for practice. Absolutely. I find it really difficult. Like, oftentimes I'll go into doing an American accent without really consciously thinking about it, particularly when I'm around other Americans. My roommate was commenting on it the other day that when one of my closest friends comes around, I do his accent. He's from Southern California, and I do his accent more than I do my own home accent. It's ridiculous. It's bizarre, very strange, and I have no conscious control over it at all. And Tammy, this isn't book one. This is actually book two, but this is book one in like a smaller trio of books in the wider series. So the series that Alastair Stone Chronicles at the moment has about 16 books in it. I think the 16th book just came out. And I've narrated all of them but the first book, which is why I'm not narrating the first book today, because I didn't narrate the original. But this is the second book, and this book kind of has its own story arc. This is the beginning of a story arc that takes you through this book and then the next two. But they're all readable as standalone as well. And yeah, they're great. So anyway, on with the rest of chapter one. This is The Forgotten by R.L.King. Yeah. I need more tea. Always. It's my mantra. Stone's first impression of Madison McLean was of abject misery. The room Barnett led him to was decorated with brightly colored posters, soft furniture, and cheerful stuffed animals. The little girl, dressed in a pink My Little Pony t-shirt and red jeans, sat curled up in an armchair, clutching a tattered stuffed zebra. She didn't look up as the door opened. "Hello, Madison," Barnett said, his voice low and full of kindness. "How are you today?" "Okay," she murmured into the zebra's stuffed flank. "I've brought someone to talk with you," he said. "Will you talk with him?" She shrugged, still not looking up. "I guess so." Barnett motioned for Stone to take the chair next to Madison. With a glance that clearly said, "Remember what I told you," he moved over and settled into another chair out of her line of sight. Stone did as directed, taking a deep breath. He had little cause to interact with children, and he wasn't entirely certain how to begin here. With an eye toward what was obviously a one-way mirror on the other side of the room, he smiled and said, "Hello, Madison. My name is Dr. Stone. You can call me Alastair, if you like. I'm pleased to meet you." He tried hard to maintain the same even, gentle tone Barnett had used. Her eyes came up. They were blue, sunken into deep hollows. "You talk funny," she said. He chuckled. "I sure do. I'm from England. Do you know where that is?" She shook her head and clutched the zebra tighter. Stone studied her for a moment, then switched to magical sight. Her strong, solid aura was streaked with darker spots. Clearly she was troubled, which wasn't at all unexpected. He would have been more surprised if her aura didn't show any disturbance. "Is it all right if I ask you a few questions?" he continued, watching her aura, examining it for any changes as they spoke. "I guess so." There was no animation in her voice at all. She sounded beaten. It was a tone of voice that Stone, even with his self-imposed ignorance about how children behaved, was sure should never come from the mouth of someone this young. Not in a proper world, anyway. He leaned forward a little. "Who's your friend there?" She hugged the zebra tighter, as if expecting Stone to try to take it. "Stripey. My mom gave him to me when I was little." "I see," he murmured. "I hurt her." The little voice was full of misery. The dark spots in her aura shifted and roiled, clouding its brilliant gold. He paused. Why did I agree to this? "Madison, can you tell me about what happened? I know that Dr. Barnett's probably asked you before, but can you tell me too?" Tears swam in her eyes. She pulled her knees up and wrapped her arms around them, sandwiching Stripey close. "I don't remember," she whispered. "You don't remember?" She shook her head. "That's what I told Dr. Barnett." He focused his scrutiny further, hoping to see anything odd about her aura. He dealt with possessions before, usually some rogue spirit that had been summoned to the material plane and couldn't find its way back home, so it attached itself to a convenient body for a while. But possessing spirits always left signs in the host's aura, usually a second, fainter echo of another aura. Hard to spot if you weren't looking for it, but Stone knew what to look for. He saw nothing. "Can you tell me anything you do remember?" "I had a bad dream," she said, head buried in Stripey's neck. It was hard for Stone to make out what she said. He tuned out everything in the room except the little girl in front of him. "I see," he said softly. "I have those sometimes too. What sort of bad dream was it?" "I don't know." She sniffled. "I got up to go to the bathroom. I had to pee." At that point she began to shake. "Then I don't remember anything until... "It's all right," he said. "Take your time." Her aura was a mess now, the dark spots rising up to nearly blot out the normal gold. Clearly her thoughts were agitating her. Behind her, Barnett started to rise from his chair, but Stone waved him back down. Madison pulled in a deep, shuddering breath and met his eyes. I was standing next to Mommy's bed. She had something in her eye. There was blood." Without warning, she leapt from the chair, flinging Stripey aside and launching herself into Stone's lap. Her back shook as she dissolved into tears. Stone, startled, for a moment did nothing. He glanced up at Barnett. "Help me," and hesitantly put his arms around the little girl, feeling her racking sobs. "Shh," he whispered. "It's all right." "Of course it's not all right. You murdered your mother and you don't even remember it. How can anything ever be all right for you again?" Barnett got up from his chair and put his hand on Madison's shoulder. "Come on, sweetheart. That's enough for now. I'm sorry if Dr. Stone upset you. I'm sure he didn't mean to." "Of course not," Stone said. He allowed Barnett to lift Madison from him, continuing to watch her aura for changes. For the briefest of seconds, he thought he caught a glimpse of something, a sort of red flaring around the edges of the gold. But then it was gone. Barnett carried Madison toward the door, which had opened to admit a nurse. As they reached it, the little girl raised her head and met Stone's eyes over Barnett's shoulder. I lied about not remembering. I watched it," she said in a small voice. "I watched it like I was a robot, like I was in a robot. But I couldn't stop myself. I tried, but I couldn't. I'm sorry, Mommy. I'm sorry." Then she broke into sobs again. Barnett handed her to the nurse who carried her out. The door closed. Stone stood, running a hand back through his hair. He watched the closed door and said nothing. "Well?" Barnett asked, turning back to him. "Did you get any insights?" Stone shook his head. He had to give the doctor credit for the fact that the question sounded reasonable, not sarcastic. It was more than he got from most professionals. He sighed. "I've never seen anything like that." "So you're saying that she's not possessed by a demon or something? I can set Ms. McLean's mind at ease about that." That time, a little bit of the sarcasm did get through. "Doctor," Stone said, shrugging, "I study the occult. I don't practice it." The lie came easily, as it always did. "Based on what I've studied about so-called possessions, this doesn't look like one. I'm inclined to believe that this case is more related to your expertise than mine." Barnett looked troubled, but didn't reply. "What I wonder, though," Stone continued, "is why you allowed me here at all. I understand that Ms. McLean requested it, but you could have easily turned it down the request as preposterous, which is what I expected you to do when she approached me. The fact that you did allow me here suggests that you might be at a loss about how to classify her case or proceed with her treatment. Is that true?" Barnett's gaze came up sharply, as if he hadn't expected Stone to catch on to that. For several long seconds, he said nothing. Then he sighed, opened the door, and motioned Stone out. "I'll admit it, Dr. Stone. I and my colleagues are stumped. This isn't a typical case by any means. I can't discuss the details with you, you understand, but I will say this. We haven't been able to find any of the indicators that usually lead to such a violent outcome. Literally everyone we've talked to in this little girl's life tells the same story. She was happy, well-adjusted, and adored her mother." Stone's mind went back to that brief flare of red around Madison's aura. Had he really seen that, or was it just a momentary glitch? "I wish I could be of more help, Dr. Barnett, even if only to help Ms. McLean to put a supernatural explanation out of her mind." "What do you suppose she meant? I felt like I was in a robot," Barnett asked suddenly. "She's never said anything like that before." "I thought you might know." He followed Dr. Barnett back to his office. Through the door's small window, he could see Nancy McLean sitting in a chair in front of the desk, waiting. Barnett paused before opening the door. "We'll have to do some more tests. Again, I can't discuss the details with you, but that does provide a bit more insight. It sounds as if she thinks she was in some sort of a dissociative state. We see that sometimes. A person will feel as though they're watching themselves, do something without any conscious control." He sighed again, opening the door. "It's something, anyway. So your trip wasn't a complete waste of time. I appreciate you coming by, Dr. Stone. Stone said his goodbyes to Nancy McLean and got out of there. He didn't think she would call him back. In fact, he suspected that her calling him at all was a last grasp at an unlikely straw. But as he headed back to his car in the light rain, he couldn't get Madison McLean's face and her aura out of his mind. Dun dun dun. Oh gosh, all of the comments are loading all at once. The screen's frozen again. Gosh. Well, I have a fix for that. Technical difficulties all week. At least the audio's here, right? At least the audio is still here. Let me unplug my camera and plug it back in again, and hopefully that should reset the stream. And here we are, with the camera turned back on, I think. It looks like it's turned back on in my software over there on my computer screen. Hopefully you can see me. Because after all, when listening to an audiobook, it's the most important part. You need to be able to see me, because if not, then how do you know what's happening in the book? Audio alone? Preposterous. Preposterous. This is YouTube. Yes, yesterday was the least amount of tech issues. This is the one annoying one that I'm not quite sure why it happens. It just kind of... Every now and again, my webcam's just like, you know what? I've had enough. I'm alright, actually. Think I'm gonna not do my thing anymore. Not be a webcam. Bizarre. But here I am, back once more. Cheers. So I hope you guys are enjoying the book today. We've got The Forgotten by R.L.King on the docket. So I narrated this book last year in about March or April. And since then, I've narrated a further 13 or 14 books in the series. The most recent one, The Seventh Stone, which is not the seventh book, which is very confusing, was just released recently, and I've been reading ahead, although I haven't started work on the audiobook just yet. But it's very exciting. It's a great series. The way that I liken it to people when I describe it is I'd say that it's kind of like Doctor Who, but with more of a urban fantasy element than a sci-fi element. And also very different. It's not a complete analog, but it's similarities. If you're a fan of Doctor Who, you'll probably be a fan of this as well. And it's probably a bit more adult than Doctor Who as well. It's probably a little bit more grown up, but similar kind of situation. But yeah, so this is The Forgotten, which is book 2. Tomorrow I'll be reading some more R.L.King. I'll be reading an entire holiday-themed novella, which is going to be very exciting. And I haven't read it yet, so I'll be reading it live for the first time, which is going to be interesting. Put my skills to the test. And if you would like today to win a free copy of The Forgotten by R.L.King on Audible, check out the video description. All I need you to do is go like my Facebook page, like the Alastair Stone Chronicles on Facebook as well, and subscribe to Soundbooth Theatre Live on YouTube, which are an awesome audiobook company who make a lot of full dramatized, full cast audiobooks with sound effects and music that really kind of take the realism up to the next level, which is exciting. Yes, like Torchwood. Kind of. I've never seen it, but that sounds right. An R-rated Doctor Who. Sorry, I'm reading the comments. Yes. So if you would like to win a copy, do all of those things, like all of the things that I was just talking about, and then go to my Facebook page and leave me a little message on my Facebook page telling me that you've done it and that you're entering the competition, and I will pick a winner at the end of the stream after I've finished to win a free copy of this book on Audible. What's next? I'm going to read chapter 2, I reckon. Lots of talk in the chat about Torchwood. I've not seen it. Am I missing out? Should I watch it? I don't know. It's never really... I was having this conversation with a friend of mine recently, today in fact, and my friend is actually sat over there, just off screen over there. She's staying with me from Tennessee. We were talking about Doctor Who, and I was like, I think that I want to like it more than I do. And this year I kind of came to the realization that I was like, this is actually a kids show, and maybe the reason why I don't quite interface with it enough is that it's not for me. It's for kids. Because I always want to really like it, and I always like it enough, but I don't love it. I don't know, but I'm willing to give Torchwood a try for sure. But anyway, enough of Torchwood, enough of Doctor Who. They pale in comparison to the Alastair Stone Chronicles, which I'm about to read some more of now. Did you like that segue? It was smooth, wasn't it? Super smooth. Gosh. Chapter 2. This is The Forgotten by R.L.King. Stone forced himself to focus on his work over the next few days, hoping it would help him to stop thinking about Madison McLean's case. It worked for a while. He had classes to teach, assignments to grade, meetings to attend. He even tried going out with his usual pub crawling group to see if getting good and drunk would work to dispel the image of the miserable little girl. All he got for that was a wicked hangover and a series of uncomfortable dreams featuring a red-eyed, demonic little girl poking a pencil into a zebra's eye until it screamed and woke him up. He almost wished he hadn't even agreed to talk to the girl. It would have made things a lot easier. He'd been so good, too, up until now, concentrating on his work and his magical studies, publishing papers both in prestigious academic journals and in repositories of magical scholarship. In short, aside from a couple of brief side trips into the land of weird, he'd managed to avoid involving himself in any sort of real-world supernatural situations. 4 years. That was how long it had been since the whole mess down in Los Gatos. Sometimes it didn't seem like that long, and sometimes it seemed like the whole thing had happened to someone else, a lifetime ago. He tried to put it out of his mind as best he could. Most of the principals were gone now, or out of communication. Adelaide Bonham was still alive, but at 93, even her sharp mind had faded. Iona Lee had left for another job after Adelaide entered the elegant care home in Saratoga 2 years ago. Tommy, of course, was dead, as was Ethan, and Megan Whitney had long since taken another position at a small university in the Midwest. She'd left less than a month after they returned from the visit to his home in England. As was the case with all of his former relationships, they'd parted on good terms, but he'd gotten the strong impression she'd prefer that he didn't call her. He heard later that she'd married a lawyer. There had been several other women since then, but none of them had lasted longer than 6 months. The most recent had ended earlier this year. Despite Stone's best efforts to the contrary, it was just a fact of life that mages tended to attract oddness, and oddness tended to repel mundanes. At this point, he wasn't in any hurry to start the process again with someone new. At least the nightmares had mostly stopped. Until he'd met Madison McLean, anyway. He thought he might have managed 8 hours sleep over the last 3 days. After a week passed with no success in his attempts to put the matter out of his mind, he reluctantly bowed to the inevitable. He went to the Stanford Library during a midday break, gathered some back issues of several of the local newspapers, and settled down in an out-of-the-way corner of the faculty area to see if any new information had come to light about the case. He decided that perhaps if he could find some closure, his restless mind might stop insisting on chewing the whole business over like a tough steak. Normally, the fact that his brain refused to stop processing any sort of puzzling or intriguing information in the background worked to his advantage, as it often presented him with solutions to problems he'd long given up on. Sure, it sometimes did so at inopportune times, but on the whole, he considered it a positive trait. The only time it wasn't was when he genuinely wanted to put something aside. His brain didn't have an off switch, and it was a perverse bastard, too. The things he wanted most to forget about were usually the ones that it spent the bulk of its spare cycles grinding on. He found nothing else about Madison's case past the initial articles that had appeared after the killing had occurred. Even those were quite light on facts. They included no concrete details beyond the fact that a little girl had killed her mother in North San Jose and that she was now under psychiatric observation. After that, nothing. It was as if the press had been forbidden to print anything else. Stone figured it was probably because once Dr. Barnett got involved, he put the whole case on lockdown to protect Madison's privacy. He sighed and prepared to close the paper. That was that, then. There was no chance Dr. Barnett would let him talk to Madison again. He was sure of that. It hadn't been hard to read the expression on the man's face. As Stone had suspected, he'd only allowed the conversation to humor Nancy McLean. And now that it had taken place, that was the end of any occult connections, respected professor or not. As he turned the page over, another headline caught his eye. Man held in train murder of local woman. Intrigued, he stopped and focused on the article. As he skimmed it, he felt a chill. A 53-year-old man had inexplicably pushed a 61-year-old woman in front of an oncoming commuter train only a week after Madison had killed her mother. The man had made no attempt to run afterward. Other people on the platform grabbed him, and he'd waited docilely for the police to arrive. He had no history of mental illness. When questioned, he became distraught and told them that he hadn't meant to do it, and that he'd felt as if someone else had taken over his body. Stone said, tapping his pen on the table. Interesting. He pulled out his notebook and jotted down the details of the case, then put the paper aside to photocopy the article before he left. I wonder if there are other cases like this. He had been specifically scanning the paper for anything about Madison's case, paying no particular attention to anything else. Now, he started at the top of the stack and paged through them again, this time looking out for any unusual or violent murders in the past few weeks. He found 2 others, both intriguing in different ways. The first was a man found murdered in an alley behind an East San Jose bar. The paper didn't go into details about the killing, but Stone got the impression that the body had been found in a particularly horrific state. Now that he saw the article, he had a vague memory of hearing something about the murder on the news when it had happened. The second murder, or murders, were even more interesting, partially for where Stone found them described. The other 3, Madison, the man in the alley, and the train murder, had all been on or near the front page. This case was on the back page of the front section, reported in only a few sketchy paragraphs. The details were scarce, but the article described a case where 6 men at a homeless camp in San Jose had been murdered and arranged around their campfire. The only other thing mentioned was that the police were investigating, had no leads as yet, and requested the help of the public to call in if they'd seen anything suspicious. In other words, the standard boilerplate mysterious murder text. Stone frowned at the article, jotting more notes in his notebook. Arranged. What did that even mean? He thought it odd that the paper included so little detail, given that it was a multiple murder. Did the homeless get so little regard around here that even killing a half-dozen of them didn't rate front-page news? He knew the police were busy. Crime, particularly violent crime, had increased dramatically in the area in the last few years. But even so, murder should still be a top priority, regardless of who the victims were. He sighed, tossed the paper onto his pile to photocopy, and grabbed the next one. It took him another half-hour to get through the rest, and by the time he finished, he had found numerous other murders and violent assaults. But the rest of them were gang-related, common muggings, domestic violence, and other explainable crimes. He made his copies, stuffed them into his old leather briefcase, and headed back to his next class. So, he thought as he walked, you've got this information, what are you going to do with it? It was a good question, and a perfectly legitimate answer would be nothing. It certainly wasn't his job to investigate mysterious murders. Even with his magical ability, it could be dangerous to poke his nose into things he didn't understand. And besides, he had courses to teach. He didn't have time to play junior detective, fascinating as the cases could potentially be, especially if they had an occult connection. He'd had quite enough of that, between the nasty business in Los Gatos and the whole affair after he'd arrived in the USA. Best to leave it to the proper authorities. That was the thing, of course. If any of these crimes had some sort of magical component, Madison's perhaps, or the man who'd pushed the woman in front of the train, then leaving them to the police to deal with probably meant they would never be solved. They might be good at their jobs. He was sure they were, but he'd dealt with mundane police before, and they were hopeless when it came to supernatural crime. He reached his classroom and paused outside the door, nodding to a couple students as they passed him on their way inside. Still, I suppose it wouldn't do any harm to just poke around a bit at the murder sites, he decided. By now it had been long enough that it probably wouldn't look suspicious for him to be there. It wouldn't take long. He could do it whenever he had free time, and with any luck it would convince him that there was nothing spooky associated with the murders. That way, he could let the police handle them with a clear conscience. That decided, he pushed the door open and forced himself to put the matter out of his mind and concentrate on the day's lesson on the Salem witch trials. That is the end of chapter 2. I'm just looking at chapter 3 as well, and it's rather long, so I might not read all of it because that might take us into next week. But I'll read some of it, certainly. Let me check out the comment section and see how you guys are all doing in there. Love the hashtag smooth. Smooth as you like. Definitely more adult than Doctor Who. I'm always so smooth. Thank you. Are these standalones, or is there a cliffhanger at the end of the book? This book, it doesn't have a cliffhanger at the end of it, I don't think. You'll forgive me, I can't quite remember. Someone who's read it might give a better idea. It's certainly not, like, it leads into the next book, but the story of this book wraps up individually. This isn't because this isn't a romance book. I would hesitate to say, I would say hesitantly that romance books tend to be the books that are guilty of doing the kind of like cliffhanger that forces you into buying the next book more than any other genre of book. And because this isn't a romance book, it plays fair. So there is an overarching plot line, and you will want to read the next books to find out the rest of the plot line, but it's not a cliffhanger in that you're going to be like, oh gosh, what happened next? Like, the story in and of itself wraps up. But this book is part of a 3-book kind of larger story within a 16-book larger story. So, but yeah, you can read this book completely standalone without having to read any other book and be totally satisfied with the story. And yeah, flipping from American to British, this book series has taught me to handle that with a finesse I never had before. It's weird. It's strange. Sometimes I like get it wrong, and I'll be reading like the American accents in a British accent and the British accent in an American accent. It's hurts the brain. I'll tell you that. Kathy, you can't wait to hear the prior posts from earlier this week. They're all in the video, in my video history here. So yeah, so if you're just joining today and this is the first time that you've joined this week, I've been narrating all week since Monday, a different book each day, and you can go and check them in the upload section if you're missing the sound of my voice already. Oh, Shauna, you answered that better. None of them at the end have a cliffhanger. Yes. I do book proofing for a living, so I notice stuff like that a lot. Yes, I do slip in my accent every now and again, particularly when I'm jumping back and forth. And there are certain words, any words with a lot of R's in an American accent, I find very difficult to say. I used to work for a hotel in Arizona called the Boulders Resort, and I could not say that word in an American accent. Boulders Resort, like it's just too much of a rah, 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 rah. Sounds like an old dog. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up soon because it's 10 minutes to midnight. And I need to get to bed, and so do you. But I'm going to read a little bit of chapter 3, and so you have approx 10 more minutes. If you haven't already and you wish to win a free copy of this book, head into the video description below or to the side or wherever it is. I don't know. I'm not familiar enough with YouTube live streaming. And there are 3 links that you need to click. 2 of them are to Facebook pages. One of them is to my Facebook page. One of them is to the Alastair Stone Chronicles by R.L.King Facebook page. And then one of them is to Sound Booth Theatre Live on YouTube. So you need to like both the Facebook pages, subscribe to the YouTube page, and then leave me a note on my Facebook page letting me know that you've done it. And as soon as I end the stream today, I'll be choosing a winner to win a free copy of this book, The Forgotten by R.L.King. And if you don't win today, no worries, hang on, try again tomorrow when I'll be reading some more of R.L.King. I'm going to be reading an entire novella, so I'm going to be reading the whole thing. So I'm going to be wrapping up the whole story, which will be a total treat because you can listen to the whole thing in its entirety. Won't that be lovely? I can't wait. So I'm going to be reading about 10 more minutes, so get your competition entries in. Do all of the things that you need to do. If you've entered before and you've already won earlier on in the week, enter again. Why not? You might win a second time. Who knows? Great. So, onwards. Chapter 3, the last chapter I'll be reading for today. This has, as always, been super fun. Thanks for hanging out with me and allowing me to sit here and talk to myself in a room for an hour. Chapter 3. Stone felt out of place in the small, hole-in-the-wall bar. To be fair, he often felt out of place, but in this case he was keenly aware of the clientele's eyes on him as he sat at one side of the long bar under a buzzing TV tuned to a soccer game in Spanish. The bar was in East San Jose, anchoring one end of a decaying strip mall that was mostly defunct except for a taqueria and a combination liquor store check-cashing place at the other end. The other customers were almost all male and Hispanic, working-class men stopping by to unwind with a few beers after a shift. It was obvious this was the sort of neighborhood bar where everybody knew everybody else, and newcomers were noticed immediately. Many of the men watched Stone now with varying expressions: curiosity, suspicion, wariness. A few had surreptitiously slipped out the back door. Stone wondered what they thought about why some skinny white guy had shown up in their favorite watering hole alone. He also wondered if any of them knew the man who had been eviscerated in an alley behind the place a few weeks back. So far, the bartender, a beefy man with a salt and pepper brush cut, an impressive mustache, and an SJSU Spartans t-shirt, had ignored Stone except to ask him what he wanted to drink. They didn't have Guinness, so he settled for trying a local microbrew. He was halfway through it now, perusing a folded copy of the Mercury News. There didn't seem to be any new reports of odd murders. When he looked up, the bartender was standing in front of him. "I'm fine," he said, indicating his half-full beer glass with a head tilt. "Thank you." The bartender didn't move. "Mind if I ask what you're doing here?" His accent was thick, but his English was flawless. "Do I need a reason?" Stone asked. "Perhaps I was in the area and wanted to stop in for a drink." The bartender shook his head. "Dudes like you don't stop in places like this without a reason. You INS? 'Cause I know these guys. They're all nice and legal." "Ah, so that's it." Stone chuckled, shaking his head. No, I'm not from immigration, nor am I a policeman. Actually, if you have a moment, I have a couple of questions I'd like to ask you. Why don't you give me another of these? He slid a $20 bill next to his beer glass. "Keep the change. Excellent service." The bartender eyed him like he didn't know what to make of him, but took the 20 and returned with another beer, which he put down in front of Stone. "What kind of questions?" Stone didn't miss the fact that several of the other men were watching him over their own beers. He shifted for a moment to magical sight to read the room's aura. So far it was still wary and suspicious, but not overly hostile. In fact, he thought it might have calmed a bit since he revealed he wasn't here hunting for illegals. "A man was murdered near here a few weeks ago. I assume you heard about it." The bartender's eyes narrowed. "What about it? Why do you want to know?" Stone shrugged. "Curiosity, mostly." "You a reporter?" "No, actually, I'm a university professor doing a bit of research." He hoped the man didn't ask him to prove it. He didn't have his Stanford ID on him, but he didn't want to reveal either his name. He did have his Stanford ID on him, but he didn't want to reveal either his name or his departmental affiliation. "Research on a dead guy? What are you, criminal justice or something?" "Not exactly. Did you know the man who was killed? Was he perhaps a regular here? If so, you have my condolences. Terrible, terrible thing." The bartender paused, clearly considering whether to just tell Stone to take a hike. Finally, he shrugged. "Nah, he was a regular. I seen him around here a few times trying to beg drinks. Sometimes one of the guys would take pity on him, you know. I think maybe he was homeless." "I see." Stone, playing his part, pulled out a small notebook and jotted that down. "I understand this might be uncomfortable for you, and I apologize for that, but could you tell me a bit about what happened? I got the impression from the paper that it was rather horrific, but yeah, I didn't see it, just heard about it after." He hooked a thumb off to his right. "Ben over there saw it. I don't know if he wants to talk about it. It messed him up pretty bad, but maybe if you buy him a beer or two." "Of course." Stone glanced over in the direction he was pointing to see 3 men in paint-spattered t-shirts around a large table. One of them, a stocky young man in his mid-20s, glanced up when the bartender called his name, then came over when he beckoned. "Hey, Ben, this guy wants to know about the dead guy in the alley. He's some kind of professor. You want to help him out?" Ben looked dubious, looking Stone over. "I don't know, man. That whole thing was bad news. I kind of just want to forget about it." "I'd appreciate any help you could give me," Stone said. And to the bartender, slipped up again. And to the bartender, "Please give him one of whatever he's drinking." Still reluctant, but a bit less so, Ben took his free beer and led Stone over to an unoccupied table. "What do you want to know?" "I ain't kidding, it was bad. It happened like a month ago and I still have nightmares about it. I promise I won't ask for much of your time. If you could just tell me what you saw." "Yeah, okay." Ben rubbed the back of his neck and took a long pull from his beer. "I pick up a little extra cash cleaning up the bar," he said. I come early in the morning before my regular construction shift starts. Park in the alley in the back." He gestured toward the back door. "Anyways, I showed up that day and..." Hesitating, he looked away. Stone waited. Ben swallowed. And I saw this guy in the alley, like, all over the alley." "You mean the body was in pieces?" Stone asked, leaning forward. "Not exactly in pieces." He took another drink. "Sorry, man, it was hard. It was like someone had ripped his stomach open and pulled his guts out, you know? Real Jack the Ripper stuff. There was blood everywhere, scared the shit out of me." "What did you do then?" Stone asked. "What did you think I did? First I puked up my breakfast in a dumper, then I went inside and called the cops. I didn't touch nothing. I was afraid they'd think I did it, you know?" Stone nodded. "Would it be possible for you to show me where you saw the man? Was it directly in back of the bar?" "Nah, it was down a little ways. Only reason I saw him is 'cause I come in that way." He tilted his head at Stone. "What kind of professor are you, anyway? Wanting to know about some freaky murders? It's just something for a paper I'm writing. Stone stood. How about it? Will you show me? Yeah, I guess so, he said reluctantly. But only for a minute. I'm watching the game. Come on. Dun dun dun. That seems like a natural ending point. I don't want to get too bogged down with describing the next scene because it's long. Yeah, I think I'm done. That was The Forgotten, chapters 1, 2, and half of chapter 3 by R.L.King. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I hope you guys have enjoyed, once again, joining me for another bedtime story. Yeah, I hope you had fun. So for those of you who are still watching and still want to win a free copy of this book, The Forgotten by R.L.King, you still have approximately 2 minutes before I get up, walk to my computer, turn off this live stream and check my Facebook comments. So very quickly, all you need to do, go to the video description right now, look at the 3 links that are listed there, click on all of them, like the Facebook pages, subscribe to the YouTube channel, then go back to my Facebook page and leave me a little comment telling me that you've done everything, and I will pick a winner to win a free copy of The Forgotten that I've been reading today. And tomorrow you have your last chance to come join me for another bedtime story, and I'll be reading some more R.L.King. I'll be reading part of one of her holiday stories, which I haven't read yet and can't remember the name of. I think Stone for the Holidays? That might be the name of the anthology that it's from. Who knows? It'll be an exciting moment when I reveal tomorrow, when I read the title, what it is. Yeah, but it's been super fun hanging out with you guys, and thanks, Tammy, for giving instructions on how to do all of the thing. Yes. Oh, yes, the links are all... Sorry, I'm reading the chat now. Oh, no, your screen's frozen again. Is it frozen completely? It's frozen completely. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, if you look in the video description, if you look at the bit at the top where it says "Twas the week before Christmas" and then press the little arrow, and it will come up with all of the video description, which shows you everything that you need to do. This has been super fun, guys. What a treat. I hope that you are feeling suitably festive. I hope to see some of you tomorrow, and maybe this will become more of a regular thing. Maybe I'll do it on a weekly basis. Who knows? This has been super fun, and I've been enjoying it. But yeah, I will see you guys tomorrow, and good luck to whoever's going to win. All right, guys. Toodaloo.